Hello, welcome to the Courageous Self-Care Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Marlette. On this show, we get into self-care that goes beyond bubble baths, chocolate, and wine. It's self-care that is internal. And I find that a lot of the time we focus on external self-care, and the trick really comes when we shift our focus to that internal self-care. All the external self-care tends to take care of itself, and then we don't have to fight so much with the nutrition and the exercise and feeling guilty and that kind of stuff. So that is where we're coming from. And today I have a guest with me, Steve Osmond. Steve, welcome.
Thank you so much, Christina. I'm so excited to be here today.
I feel it, and I'm excited to have you here. Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a fantastic person with lots of energy and lots of joy, first of all.
I love that.
But what I do is I coach executives and leaders and business owners and help them get unstuck, help them find out what their more is. Everybody's looking for more. They can get a little bit distracted as to what that truly is. So help people find out what their more truly is, and then help them set goals and habits so that they can achieve those things.
Beautiful. And I can tell you're really good at what you do.
Well, I absolutely love it. I feel like I was born to do it.
And that is the best way to feel about our work, for sure.
Absolutely.
I love to have our guests share their favorite self-care practice. So Steve, what would you say yours is?
Well, I love that you gave me that question in advance so that I could think about it, because I have some default answers that I would give if I was just answering on the spur of the moment. But because you gave me an opportunity to think, I think the most profound self-care practice that I have is to revisit my personal core values. I did some work about 18 years ago, mining for values. And I came up with 3, and they haven't changed in 18 years. I've done the process several times, arriving on the same 3 values each time. And when I find I get busy or lost or overwhelmed or panicked or fearful or distracted, that I take some time and I revisit those values. For me, those 3 values are adventure, playfulness, and belonging. And I've built some mantras around those 3 words. I just find when I re-engage to those values and to those mantras, I feel strong and confident and focused. I feel healthier. I feel more myself. And then the outward experience from that is a more productive me and a more joyful me.
Oh my gosh, I feel like we could do an interview just on those 3 values.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love that you described it as mining. And I feel like it's the same. I've had the same type of experience. I just revisited, did an exercise again recently about core values. And it does take some mining. They're very deep in there. Why is that, do you think?
Well, I think that we want to value everything. There's something about me that sees 20 words that are powerful words. And I want to say, well, they're all great. And so therefore I must value them all equally, but that's actually not true. Out of those 20 options, I may value all of them in some way or another. But what I really want to do is drill down to find out what are my top 3 or my top 9. It doesn't mean I don't value the others. It just means that in the core center of who I am, those 2 or 3 or 4 things are what make me feel alive, make me feel most engaged. I also, one way that I confirmed that those were my values, because you always wonder, well, maybe those are just 3 things I chose.
Yeah.
One thing to help me confirm it was whenever I got angry about or irritated, I tried to trace it back and say, what's angering me or what's irritating me? And usually it came back to one of those 3 values was being stepped on. And in my relationships with people, when I get angry, I begin to ask myself the question, what value is being stepped on right now? Instead of focusing on the petty issue or the misspoken word or the being looked at the wrong way, some small little thing, I just try to go a little deeper and say, what value has been stepped on? And that helped confirm that, yeah, these three things aren't the things that, they're not just the things that make me happy. They're the things that make me mad when they get violated or stepped on. So that, and for me, that was a worthwhile exercise to mine for those values, because I was really able to be focused, and those three things helped me build an action plan for getting back on track. So, for example, playfulness as one of my three values. When I'm starting to feel overwhelmed or overworked or over busy or too serious or too burdened by life, then I engage with that playfulness value. And my mantra is, if I keep playing, I'll keep winning. So I'll just sit down and I'll say it to myself out loud or in my head and say, if I keep playing, I keep winning. And then as a coach, I coach myself and I say, okay, how can I be playing today? How can I be more playful today? And of course, within a few moments, I'm back on track. I'm re-engaging with the things that bring me joy.
I appreciate that answer, and I love how you connected it to anger and values being stepped on. And that's such a, excuse me, such a healthy way to deal with anger and take responsibility and not put it onto someone else. I love that. So my next question is, what is something that you do for, to incorporate playfulness into your life?
Well, I probably have some activities that I would do that I consider to be playful. But I think maybe it would be better to serve your listeners if I would say that I insert playfulness into my everyday engagements. So if I'm coaching a client, I'll look for the appropriate ways to put playfulness into it. In my relationship with my significant other, I'll try to say, how can I add playfulness to our relationship, or with my kids? And just have that at the front of my mind. And when I grew up, I was the class clown in school, and I always made my mom laugh, even during high tense situations. And so it's re-engaging that sense of humor, that sense of joy, that lightheartedness in everyday encounters.
I had an experience recently, like earlier this week, where I got a very clear sign. Like, playfulness is one of my core values as well. And I grew up the opposite. I grew up extremely serious, studious, wanting to get everything perfect. And it wasn't until in my 30s, people started telling me, you were so playful. You're so much fun. I'm like, who are you talking about? And it took some mining to uncover that quality that they were already seeing. But earlier this week last week I'd fallen into my serious mode again, and my husband and I were out for our early morning walk, and a coyote crossed the street, like in urban Calgary. And I had never seen a coyote near our house before, and it kept on pausing and looking back, like, are you getting my message? And then it would trot off, and then it would pause again and look back. And we saw it so many times during our walk, like it circled back, we circled back. So I looked up the meaning of seeing a coyote as an animal sign, and it said, lighten up and have more fun, get that trickiness back. Like the coyote symbolizes the great trickster in some traditions. So bring that energy in to your life. And so that's been my mission this week. What do I want to do for fun? And excellent. Yeah, so I appreciate that quality, and I resonate with it as well.
That's powerful.
Yeah, it was powerful. It was a much needed sign. All right, so gosh, I feel like there are more questions in there, but in the interest of keeping this succinct, we'll move into the next section. So the other thing I love to ask our guest experts is to share a story of courage from your life. So I'm waiting with bated breath to hear yours.
Again, I thought about a lot of things. I remember at one point I was leading an organization that had started a drop-in center and a place of residence for street people in the city of Calgary called the Calgary Dream Center. The organization that I was a part of helped launch that, helping addicted men get off the streets, helping families be reunited. But it was going horribly in my organization. And as we were planting the Calgary Dream Center, starting the Calgary Dream Center, we were losing $90,000 a month.
Oh my gosh.
And the center hadn't even opened yet. There wasn't a single resident. There was all kinds of construction issues and delays and permit issues. And yet we were on the hook for all of this money. And there was just, it was a disaster. We didn't know if we were going to make payroll. We didn't know if everything was going to collapse, that maybe the Dream Center would drag down my own organization along with it. I mean, it was a complete disaster. And I was escaping into the internet to just lose myself for a little bit. And I came across a speech by Bono of U2.
Yeah.
And he was in front of a large group of African Americans at an award show. And he began to talk about the crisis of AIDS in the world. And he began to talk about God. And that if God was anywhere, if there was a God, and if God was anywhere, he or she would be with the poor. He would be with the woman infected with AIDS. He would be with the kid who doesn't have enough to eat. And of course, you know Bono. He's prophetic and eloquent and passionate.
Yes.
And as he spoke, I was enraptured by what he was sharing. And then at the very end of his speech, people are already standing and applauding all across the auditorium. You can barely hear his voice over the applause. And his last phrase in his speech was this: "This is not a burden. This is an adventure." And I remember those words left his mouth through the computer screen to the satellite and then into my heart, into my spirit, into my soul. And I shifted my energy from a burden, oh, this is so hard and we can't do it. And every day I wake up, it feels heavy. And I shifted it into this energy of, this is an adventure to go on. This is a problem to solve. We can do this. This is a privilege, not a life sentence or a prison sentence. And that energy transitioned my attitude. And when my attitude changed, it changed the attitude of my team. And when the attitude of my team changed, we were able to find the solutions to the problems that we faced, and able to take the project over the edge to the place of victory. And 10 years later, the Calgary Dream Center still stands there on McLeod Trail in my city in Calgary, and helping homeless people every day have their lives restored and renewed, and to get their dreams back at the Dream Center.
What a powerful story. And I love that Bono was involved. I absolutely adore U2 and Bono. And I see how it was related to your core value of adventure.
Absolutely.
Did you know that at the time?
I knew it, but not fully.
Right. Yeah.
I knew later, as I told the story, I actually made that my mantra for my adventure. My adventure mantra is, this is not a burden, this is an adventure. So when I'm feeling lost with the burden of my work as a business coach, helping business leaders, as you know, finding clients, building my own business, there's days where there's setbacks and difficulties. And I tell myself, Steve, this is not a burden, this is an adventure. And I'm able to share that with other business leaders as I'm coaching them, as they begin to feel, I mean, the psychological price that an entrepreneur as a business owner pays is incredible. And they need someone to look them in the eye and say, this is not a burden. This is an adventure. We can do this. Let's do this.
Oh, that is so powerful. And I love that that's your story of courage, because shifting your own viewpoint, shifting your own energy from being a victim to being a victor, that takes tremendous courage, because it is so much easier to stay down in the mire. It's so much easier to focus on the negative. Our brains are hardwired for that. It takes effort and courage to shift into the positive, and you were able to do that. So my next question is, how do you think you were able to accomplish that monumental shift?
Well, I love that question. I suppose it comes down to the question, where does motivation come from? And we talk about intrinsic motivation, the stuff that comes from the inside, and extrinsic motivation, the stuff that comes from the outside. And I think it's a combination of both. You know, we can find inspiration from hearing a speech by Bono, and it ignites something externally, or reading a book, or reading an autobiography, or watching a movie. I remember watching The King's Speech years ago, and how something from the outside just gave me the grace and the virtue to keep going. But also intrinsically, those values that are inside of me, and tapping into them, letting those values emerge to the forefront of my thinking, instead of the fears or the inner critic, or the things that say you can't, and just consciously allowing the courage and the genius and the energy that's inside of me, let that come to the forefront, and let that be the leader and the guide in my life.
That's a beautiful answer. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Well, I know you're up to some amazing work currently, and I would love for you to share what that's all about, and then how people can get in touch with you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for asking that. 70% of Canadians are worried about the mental health issue and psychological situations in their workplace. It is a top of mind issue for Canadians. I know that you have listeners all over the world, and it's the same in all countries. People are concerned about mental health issues. Of course, our workforce ultimately is made up of youth that come through our school system, come through high school, college, and then they enter the workforce. And so, to be proactive with this issue of mental health issues, I've engaged in a Impacting Youth mental health tour, where I'm partnered with an amazing lady by the name of Connie, Jakab. And we are traveling to schools in Southern Alberta and in British Columbia. At this point, we may expand that. But we are traveling to schools, to high schools, junior highs and high schools, to bring a message of hope to the students, so that even in grade 9 or grade 10, 11, 12, they're already beginning the process of having the tools that they need, the attitudes that they need to be able to cope, of course, cope with mental health issues. That's important, but even move beyond coping into hoping, which is a hope for a better future, a hope for a full life, a joyful life, not without challenges, of course, but a life filled with something that really excites them. And so what I really focus on is helping students move from hope, the virtue, which is sort of this idea, this energy that's hard to explain. Keep your hopes up. What does that mean? So translating hope as a virtue into hope as a plan. What are some actual practical steps that these high school students can take? And as well as we're meeting with the parents in the evenings, but what are some plans that we can actually put in place to take hope out of this sort of ethereal, mystical realm into an actual day by day, week by week, month by month, a set of practical steps that can help students move into their preferred future. In particular, students that deal with anxiety, depression, shame, and then helping them write a brand new story for their life. The lady that I'm working with, Connie, Jakab, she's with an organization called Movement with a Message. And her part of this school gathering is dance. She does hip hop and pop and lock, which if I try to do it, I would humiliate myself, and people would instantly turn off this broadcast. But she's great at it. So her part of the assembly is dancing and getting the kids moving, supporting one another, vibing with each other. And then I give my hopefully not boring speech after all the dancing and the movement. Then I give my presentation on moving from hope to virtue into hope the plan.
Oh my gosh, there are just so many things that I adore about how you're approaching that. As a former high school and junior high teacher, I actually ran a dance department in my school. I know how powerful your message is and how much it's needed. And then as an embodiment coach, and I trained in dance growing up, I completely understand and agree with how powerful dance is to be able to shift not just your attitude, but dance shifts. It can shift a generation. It can shift attitudes. Dance is so often used as a way to rebel and to transform culture. So I just love how you're approaching it.
Thank you very much. We are so excited about it.
It sounds like a courageous adventure to me.
Yeah, well, standing in front of high school kids and junior high kids is a courageous event all in itself.
Oh, it sure is. Yeah, they are definitely the toughest audience. I didn't know I was starting with the very hardest audience when I was a teacher. So any other crowd, I'm like, piece of cake. Junior high students, whew, they are critical.
You are so right. It's another whole ball game for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
So people can find us a couple of ways. So I'm partnering with Connie. It's her organization that's executing the project. So you can Google Connie Jakab, Jakab, Connie Jakab, and her organization is called Movement with a Message. We also have a GoFundMe page if people want to contribute financially. So they can just go to GoFundMe and look up Impacting Youth Mental Health Tour. Impacting Youth Mental Health Tour. We're also on YouTube with a video, and on Facebook, people can add me on Facebook, Steve Osmond, Osmond on Facebook, and all of the information is there as well. People can find out how they can get involved. We are in particular looking for courageous companies and corporations and executives who would sponsor one of these high school assemblies. And we partner with those corporations or those executives. They perhaps attend the assembly. They come to the parent night in the evening. We're able to promote their company as a company that cares about mental health in our communities. And of course, and their financial investment helps us do the work that needs to be done.
Well, that is a very clever setup. I admire that.
Great, thank you.
All right, so we will put links to the pertinent links in the description below, so you can check that out below this video, or if you're listening to the audio, in the description for the podcast. Steve, thank you so much for being here. This was absolutely delightful.
Thank you, Christina. I sincerely wish you all the best with your efforts as well.
Thank you. And I do encourage you to check out Steve's and Connie's initiative. You can be part of something that is truly going to shift the energy, not just locally, but globally, because everything we do has a ripple effect. So I feel really honored to be able to help you get your message out, Steve.
Thank you so much.
All right, we are going to wrap things up. I am so grateful that you took the time to be here, because when we pause and listen to other people's stories of self-care and courage, it helps us reflect. It helps us figure out, oh, I'm on the right track, or, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I need to make some adjustments. So I feel like it's very courageous that you have shown up to listen or to watch. And I feel so grateful that you are part of the change that we are looking for on this planet. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you again, Steve.
Thank you.
I look forward to connecting with you again next time. Bye-bye for now.